Approval of notice, a property sale resolution for parcel ending in 6005, AKA 1010 Court Street for Tuesday, February 4th at 4:35 PM. Item B, approval of notice of property sale resolution for parcel ending in 7013, AKA 1205 Douglas Street for Tuesday, February 4th at 4:37 PM. Item number 7 from Human Resources, Melissa Thomas, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions and authorizations to initiate the hiring process. And lastly, from Secondary Roads, Laura Severs, approval of utility permit for placement of new fiber optic cable in the county right-of-way for long lines. And I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, next up, number 9 from Building Services, Kenny Smits, come on up.
Building Services Director Kenny Schmitz. The item before you is to approve funding for a capital improvement project for the demolition of the Law Enforcement Center at 407 7th Street. I originally had thought our previous finance director, Dennis Butler, had taken care of this 2025 CIP. Discovered that he had not, and that's why I'm before the board this evening. We have been expensing, or I have been expensing, quite a bit of the costs that we've incurred so far out of the Law Enforcement Center operating budget, and we're getting to a point where we're getting close to depleting some of those costs, depending on what we spend. So I feel it's a good time to get this before you and move forward with this CIP. If approved, we still have to go through the capital improvement approval process, if you will, conduct a public hearing and go through all the motions for that. But wanted to get this before you and get things moving so we can continue to move forward with some of the things that we need to do, and I'd answer any questions that you've got.
Kenny, and I'm new to the CIP and all that stuff, but with asking for the 1.1 million, if the bids come in under that, how does that work, I guess? If we're approving 1.1, and we bond for that?
This is allowing us to spend up to $1.1 million. The 2025 bid limit has changed for Woodbury County. I don't exactly know what that new figure is, unless Michelle does. It was 1.2 million before you had to bond. I'm not sure what the 2025 figure is.
I'll have to check into that, but I guess what I would recommend is to potentially approve up to 1.1 with a portion of it out of fiscal year 25, and then you can proceed with the work. And then we know that we have 620,000 already allocated to CIP projects. So if we said like 300,000 to 500,000 in fiscal year 25 and the remainder to be borrowed in fiscal year 26, then you'll know more of a gauge of exact expenses that you've accrued through that time to be borrowed next May for the remainder. But it would be approved to spend up to the 1.1 today out of both years.
And just, I'm asking, I don't know, so does the board or one of the members have to make that motion and then get seconds for those changes?
Yes, somebody will need to motion and the amount and which fiscal year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Kenny, from what I know, the 1.1 figure is from an estimate from one vendor.
Yes.
Is there any other, is that a fairly reliable estimate in your mind, or do you think that we should have a range to be aware of?
I'm going to ask Terry Glade of the CMBA to come up and help answer that question. The initial and the one and only guesstimate, I'm going to call it, from a demolition company was, I believe, 850,000. The reason I am asking for 1.1 is because none of those costs included an engineer or an architect for the project, which is required by Iowa bid law. Terry, if you'd like to come up and,
Sure. Terry Glade with CMBA Architects. The number that we came up with was loosely based on the demolition of the YWCA building there. Seemed like a reliable contractor, and that was a pretty substantial building to take down at the time. It basically was half the size of the law enforcement center, and so we basically doubled it and inflated it some, and so that's kind of how we came up with our estimate of where this should land. So we haven't received any bids per se because we don't have any drawings, but that's how we came up with that range.
Are there others that we could contact, or maybe we don't have enough time? Because it's kind of a time crunch, I think.
It's hard to get an estimate without documents.
Okay.
But this will be bid out, right?
I'm sorry, Joshua?
It's going to be bid out.
Oh,
under
absolutely,
Chapter
yes.
26, so
Yeah,
I think
we've got to
that's-
get to the public approval first, then we've got to get to a hearing, and then we've got to get plans and specifications drawn. And that's the points where we're trying to get to go
Right.
out and get those
And I'm just
bids.
trying to help further answer Mr. Carper's question.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? I think it's pretty straightforward. All right. Need a motion to change, so Auditor Scaff, off your recommendation, I'll make that motion. A motion to approve up to 1.1 million to be paid out over at fiscal year 25 and 26. And I would say what, up to 500K for fiscal year 25? Would that be, in your estimation, would that be fine for spreading it out?
Yes, if you want to do the 500 in fiscal year 25, I think that would be feasible.
Okay, all right. So 500K for fiscal year 25, okay?
Second.
All right. Motion by Binger, second by Nelson.
So what do we have available in fiscal year '25?
The fiscal year 25 has not been borrowed yet, so that'll
Okay.
be borrowed in May. And as of last week, we were sitting at 620,000 approved. So this would be added on to that for the borrowing. And I believe that Treasurer Bertrand's going to assist with potentially finding out what that debt payment will be for fiscal year 26, when the first payments will be due.
And so the timing of the second tranche would not conflict with the project itself?
The timing of when the funds received, there will be money available. So sometimes that fund balance goes negative, and that's a recurring thing in the CIPs because it's always, the work is approved to begin before the money is borrowed. So the money will be borrowed in May, but it's potential that that fund may go negative. But that's the process that we always go through. And then when we do borrow, we have a better idea of exactly how much money is needed, so we're not borrowing too much or too little.
Excuse me, Teen Bertrand, Woodbury County Treasurer. Just a couple of things for clarification so that as we kind of move forward with the borrowing for 2025, which is going to be May time period. So we'll start putting together some of those documents, trying to get the bids out in terms of interest rates. But are we wanting to increase that from the $600,000 and add the $500,000 that Chairman Bittinger just?
Correct.
Your motion was to add 500,000 so that we'll end up being at about 1.1 million for FY '25 borrowing.
Yes, that's my understanding of the motion.
Yes.
And I'll have the exact amount with
Right.
all of the other figures for
Right.
you.
Okay, all right. Good questions. Any further questions? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. On to item B, approval of Olson Engineering Agreement funding in the amount of $7,400. Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, so this item gets us to one of those next steps I talked about. This is a contract with Olson Engineering to do a survey, utilities and planning agreement. And Terry, I'm going to let you come up and speak to this. CMBA assisted building services with putting together this contract and making the request for these services.
We, talked to two different engineering companies. Again, we need them for the survey of the properties, basically the entire half block, including some of the surrounding street areas, just to, we need all of that information in order to know how to put the site back when it's all done, and utility connections, that sort of thing. Their $7,400 was very reasonable compared to the other quote that we received. So we would recommend going ahead with that. They're a very reputable firm, and if this proceeds, then we would actually work with them on the demolition plans as well, is our intention.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
I would move approval.
I just have a quick question, sorry. Get me up to speed again here. That $7,400, could it come out of the 1.1 for CIP? I mean, I know it's just $7,400, but, we just approved the 1.1 for that, for engineers and everything. Would it come out of that when that happens, or we'd pay that out of a different fund?
It would probably be paid out of that. This is something I'd probably work out with Michelle, or it might be a Michelle question, but we'd probably want to, we would maybe want to spend down all of our funds from the operating budget off of that building. I'm not sure that's what we want to do. It's a finance question, because we're still going to have some monitoring costs that are going to come from that. So it's a give and take on where we really want to pay something from, I guess.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Nelson, second by Dietrich. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Number 10 from Secondary Roads, Laura Severs, approval of final estimate for project ending in FE 97 with Graves Construction Company.
Good afternoon. Yes, so this is just a paperwork requirement that we have on our state-funded projects, and this was a great bridge project that we did on Correctionville Road over Whiskey Creek, and it is now completed. The audit was done successfully, and so I'm just asking for final approval of the project by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay,
I'll move it.
second. All right, motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. Any discussion, comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And Laura, you said we'll sign right there too, correct? Yeah. Okay, all right. All right. Number 11 for myself, approval of resolution establishing a county compensation board and appointing 2 members representing the Board of Supervisors. Mark, may I see that agenda item?
You bet.
Yep. I apologize, my
Sorry.
computer's on the fritz right now, so I forgot to get these printed. Met with James Loomis last week, our county attorney, about the compensation board, as we're in the budgeting process, and after consulting with James and looking at the code, it was best, him and I both looked and thought it'd be best to reestablish the compensation board just to make sure that there's a fair process, make sure that there's an outside accountability to the taxpayers, and making sure that we have someone outside of us looking at what would be a fair compensation. So Per Iowa code here, it's in the background, 331.905. It was amended in 2024 by Senate File 2042. The board just has to reinstate the compensation board, and attached in the backup, you can saw this is the resolution that ISAC put out, and also our county attorney looked over and gave to me and proved that this would be the correct resolution that we would just need to pass for this. Also in the backup, you will see the list. Dan Lind, he contacted me. He's been a former representative of the Supervisors regarding the compensation board, and he said he'd be available to serve. And then we just need to pick one other representative for us. And so, and these are the board members that had been available to serve or willing to serve again. And so these are past former compensation board members. And so on the list there is Robert Stewart, Doug Phillips, Ryan Berkshire, Al Sturgeon, and Rhonda Bridges. Once again, the compensation board is a non-paid position. It's just wonderful citizens serving their local county government. And so we say thank you for their service over these past years. And so I'm just bringing that before us so we can get this going, if that's the board's desire to do that, to reinstate the compensation board, and for us to pick two representatives. One will serve a 4-year term, one will serve a 3-year term. That's in the code to have staggering terms, and so we would just pick one for a 4-year term, one for a 3-year term, and that's what this is agenda item is about. So, open up for any questions or concerns or thoughts.
Question.
Sure.
No issue with creating this on my end. I just would like to vote on a complete resolution. So I have a question on, there's a blank here that further resolve Woodbury County directs each of the elected officials to submit their respective appointments by blank 2025. And then I'm also wondering what the one below that is if it's missing anything. It says the representatives shall serve an initial term of 4 years and the representative shall serve an initial term of 2 years. So something's missing from that. So what should be in those two clauses?
Thank you, Matthew. That's a good question. And I apologize. It's a 4 and 2 year term, so I apologize. I said 4 and 3. That one there, I do not know. Joshua, would you like to weigh in on this? Because this came over the template over from ISAC, and so I don't. Do we need to just pick a date?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some discretion there. Give the elected officials a little bit of time to designate their representative, although they've done that in the past, so I would think a week or two would be sufficient. But, yeah, it's discretion of the board as to that date.
Okay.
So I guess what date are we putting in there? And then obviously we need to stagger these. So which representatives are going to be starting out with 4 and which ones are going to be starting out with 2?
Okay. For the date, I would submit February 4th. It's 2 weeks out. I think there'd be enough time. Tina, do you have any thoughts as an elected official? Is that enough time find?
Good evening again. Just to offer a couple of clarification, just my thoughts on it. Since they did make that change in the legislation, it would make sense that the 4 and 2 years, at least for some of the elected officials, for myself, since I'm up in 2 years, it would seem reasonable that my representative would be a 2-year term at this point in time. She's committed to 4 years when I was initially elected, so that would make sense to me that that's why they're staggering some of these things, is because they recognize that elected officials are being staggered. So for Auditor Scaff, who is just newly elected, obviously she would likely have a 4-year term position. Again, the board's a little bit different because you guys are staggered anyway.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and when I met with, when I went with our county attorney, he said for the board, we have to, I guess per the code, the board has to have this, and then you guys, other elected officials would be a separate process, or just would let us know. So this is officially, James said it had to be from the board. For us, our 2 representatives had to be.
Right, and I think county attorney's on a 2-year. He's
yeah.
up in 2 years as well.
Correct, yeah. Okay.
And I think Mr. Ong is the other one that's up in 2 years. And honestly, I think you are too.
Yeah.
So,
If I might add.
Yes, Ms. Shepherd.
So my understanding is this resolution is for the entire compensation committee, not
Correct.
just the board. So
Yes.
I do think on that line where it says 4 and 2, the treasurer, the attorney, and one board of supervisor should be potentially 2 years. And then the auditor and the sheriff and the other board of supervisor be 4 years. Am I missing somebody? 7.
I don't think so.
Okay. I agree with that reasoning 100%, because it would make sense that each elected official, then the board officials that are elected on right now will have the choice of the 4-year term one.
Correct.
And the
Right.
other ones would have the choice of the 2-year term one.
Okay. Okay.
And you said February 4th is when we would have to supply you with our
Right.
individual.
Correct. Yeah, 2 weeks out. Is that enough? Is that fair enough time? 2 weeks to,
It should be
Okay.
for me. I mean, like I said, she was committed to 4 years, so
Okay.
it shouldn't be an issue.
okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Tina. Okay, so February 4th. And then the initial terms for the 4-year, so for Dan Lind, I would move him to do the 4-year term for the board supervisor. Then it's just, James just said we just need to pick somebody else from the list and give them the other staggered term, and so it's just up to the board, whoever we would like to pick from the list. They were available and willing to serve. So it doesn't, Matthew, I don't know if you have any preference or you know anybody
You said from a list
from the list right here in the backup. This
to
list.
represent the board?
Yeah. Yeah. and the-
They're not already committed to other elected officials?
Yeah, I was gonna say one of them's my rep, so.
Yeah, those are
Yeah,
reps
one of them
for
is the
other.
former auditor's rep, which,
Okay, because this is what Dan had given me for, okay, so that may be
Yes.
miscommunication
So
between
you-
Dan
you
and I
might-
on our.
You might not wanna pick up, well,
Sure,
you might not wanna pick my rep. I
Who-
might
which
be a
one is your
little
rep?
upset. Rhonda Bridges.
okay, no problem. So he gave me the entire list of who all served.
Yes.
Okay, because I'd asked him
And-
who would
and-
serve for the supervisor, but I think he must have given me the entire list, okay.
And I
Okay.
wanna say that
That's on-
Doug Phillips was Sheriff Sheehan's.
Sheriff, okay, so she,
Yeah.
okay, all right, we'll take that off and those, okay,
Ryan Butcher was Loomis's.
okay,
and
So
Al
the-
Sturgeon was Auditor Gills.
okay. So he gave me the entire list, okay. I apologize for that, board, that's on my mistake on that. So it looks like it must have been the other supervisor would have been the Robert Stewart, would have been the other representative for us. All right.
So then in 1 week, we need to vote to approve a second member, or do we just,
No, we do it right now. We just would approve our two, and that's it.
and R2 are being,
We could approve Robert Stewart and Dan Lind.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's all we would need to approve for us, and that would satisfy
Okay.
for us, per Iowa code, what the board supervisor has to do, so. All right. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me through that as we reinstate this, and
Yep.
I apologize for that error and oversight. So, I would move first is I would move the resolution establishing a county compensation board and appointing 2 members to represent the Board of Supervisors on that compensation board. That would be Daniel Lind and Robert Stewart. And I would move,
And then throw the date in there.
move the date, February 4th, 2025, to have the officials submit their respective appointments to the Board of Supervisors. And I would move Daniel Lind to the 4-year, and then Robert Stewart to the 2-year appointment, staggered term, for the Board of Supervisors representative. Does that sound, okay, good, all right,
Second.
okay. All right, any other discussions?
And also, we'll be adding the other elected officials to the
Yes.
2- and 4-year term.
Yeah, once we officially submit those, yep.
On the resolution.
Yes, correct, yep. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you, everyone, for that, as we navigate that. Next up on the agenda, number 12, is just reports on committee meetings. Anyone had any? I'll go. I just had our Siouxland Human Investment Partnership meeting. The biggest item right now is just, once again, they're just going through audit right now, and that's pretty much was the highlight of the meeting, was just the audit, and so just making sure that their finances are in order, and looks, as of the audit right now, looks like everything is good with the ship, so. But that's all that I have. Okay, all right.
I guess,
you have any
let's throw one.
Okay.
Just from Woodbury County Emergency Management, they had disaster preparedness classes last fall. There were, I think they did 4 of them. They're widely popular and widely, highly attended, and there was some really good information. They're going to do 2 more here this winter. The first one's going to be January 29th, and that's going to be in Correctionville at the City Hall. And then they got another one that's going to be February 19th, and that one's going to be at the Climbing Hill Emergency Services Building. So I think Mikey's going to keep doing them if people keep coming out, but another 2 opportunities. I'm going to try to be at the one at Correctionville on the 29th, but again, 2 opportunities, and you can find them on Facebook, and they're pretty active on there if you need any more information.
All right. Here are no other community meetings. All right, we'll move on to item 13, citizen concerns. Nothing, Doyle, tonight? Okay, all right. It's good to have you here, Doyle. All right, number 14, board concerns. Go ahead, Dave. Yep.
And I'll just say, so, I apologize for all the questions I'm going to have for department heads and stuff like that, and just learning processes. Supervisor Carper, Supervisor Ong, Dr. Scaff, we all went down to the ISAC, and it was new supervisors course for us last week, 2 days, Wednesday, Thursday. It was a lot of good learning and learning about the different departments. I look forward to also getting around to all the departments yet. So please bear with me if I do ask questions that you're probably like, why is he asking that? But it's for my learning purposes. Thanks.
One thing that I have is just thank you to our department heads and elected officials for being flexible regarding the CIP presentations. We moved those just for the counsel of Joshua. Thank you, Joshua, for your counsel. Just regarding the agenda item need to be more detailed, so we would sufficiently meet Iowa code. And so as I'm learning this new rule, and so we will be presenting next week, but that was why. So we just need to have a more detailed listing of everything since we were doing a new procedure with those. So, but thank you, Joshua, for that, and making sure that we did everything above board and not get ourselves into any type of legal trouble. So, but anyhow, that's all that I have. Anybody, any other concerns? Okay. All right. Well, with that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.